I took something from Supersource because I wanted to get some proportional reasoning in as well. So I gave them, I essentially was only going to give them the light green Cuisinart rod, and then I was going to give them the dark green. So I gave them 4 to start from left to right measuring their desk. So I gave them 4, and then they had to estimate how many it would be across. So instead, some of them were trying to do this. And then they were making errors. So then they got to, I put out 4 more, and then they could re-estimate. And then the thinking part was, after, so they said, well, that's great, so it was 20 light green Cuisinart rods. And then I said, well, so given that measurement of the light green, how many dark green Cuisinart rods is it going to take to measure your desk from left to right? And I only gave them 1, so they can't
Line them up so it's proportional.
So a lot of them, you know, the ones that were struggling were saying 60. And then one of them said, well, it has to be half. It has to be half, because 1 dark green Cuisinart rod is equivalent to 2 light green. So then for some of those, like my first group was like, so then the second one was, well, let's do an orange, and they totally got it. And then we were, well, we had just done patterning.
And the red
so,
too, right?
And the red, yeah. So it really went in, it lended itself quite well to our patterning, because they said, well, 1 dark green is equivalent to 2 light green, and 2 light green and 1 dark green are equivalent to 3 red. So they were like, it was, yeah. So that's why I brought in the brown and the yellow and the purple. And, yeah, that was good. Yeah.
My group had to take a piece of string and we measured 24 centimeters.
That's it.
And then in the beginning, the string was untied, and which was a good thing, because when it was untied, they started to kind of make what they were supposed to do with the string was to make quadrilateral rectangles.
As many rectangles
Yeah.
as they could.
And
Perimeter before.
yes, but they had trouble.
Hello everyone, there will be a Rainbow Loom Club meeting in the gym right now, last recess, so Rainbow Loom Club meeting in the gym last recess. Thank you.
And they could have strung those on, so next step for sure,
Yes.
if I do them again in my class or you do them, we would give them a geoboard as well.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
some of them would find where we're
That's a
having a
good-
hard
yeah.
time getting them to stay. And in hindsight, it said not to use an elastic for reasons that the perimeter's going to not be the same. So then Melissa and I were like, why didn't we think
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah. I
So
did tie.
geoboard would have been key for them. And then could have given them a few pieces of that, right? And then,
That's good,
so,
right?
Yeah, they came
and
out.
then they could do perimeter, right? You said that?
Yeah, and the challenge was to find as many different rectangles that they possibly could, and I think we came up with 6 or 7, so it was great.
And you could do an extension for that, for the kids would be area. Like find the area, you know what I mean? Like that's a perfect example of what we've done, find the area. And the differences.
Two birds, one stone, right?
Compare.
Yeah, so that was good, that was from Vanderwall. That was the, yeah, that was right from the 3 to 5.
Good.
Yeah.
Our group talked about, it was similar to what Sean's group did, through Google Maps and Google Earth, and we talked about, you know, the concept of a kilometer, and related it to other measurements. 2 very different groups. The
Need
first-
some help there, Gabe?
Oh, we have the cell phone there, it's so hard to get them in and out.
No, the first group was great, like they were talking about, okay, well, you know, there's 100 meters in a football field, so you'd have to line up like, 8 football fields to get to my house, that kind of thing, so that was great. Second group struggled a little bit more with even the basic measurements, but still generated a lot of questions, like, so we got, with the first group, our final question was like, if somebody had no idea what a kilometer was, how would you tell them? How would you tell them what it was? Like, using comparisons, but not necessarily other standard comparisons, because what if they didn't know that? I said, well, what if they don't know what a centimeter is? So they had to kind of come up with language that explained what a kilometer was. Oh, that's good.
And that's why the big piece would be measuring with non-standard, with like, paper clips and cars and a school bus. That's why it gives kids that are maybe, that don't have the
basics that,
Like a kilometer means you walk for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, what it looks like or what it
feels
means,
like.
yeah. But what I ended up thinking, I wrote down all their responses, I lost my charge to this, so I can't tell you exactly what they were, but what I ended up thinking was, those activities are really, they're valuable and they're great, but as a teacher, when I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so how do I consolidate this, and when am I gonna be seeing the solid learning? Like, what is it that I wanna see from these activities, and when will they solidify that? In the, you know, because experimentation is great, but then what are the next steps?
Well, any thoughts around that? I mean, that's a great question.
Well,
It kind of
I
gives me
think that,
diagnostic.
yeah, but I think what you're doing is constructing the big ideas.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
But I
they
was-
need lots of that
Yeah.
experience to get to the big idea of what's a kilometer, if you're gonna relate I guess meters to kilometers, which maybe you wouldn't really do, but like if you say centimeters to meters or something, if they don't have a solid understanding of what those two things mean, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
right?
so I was thinking, when do I know, like, how do I make sure that the learning is solidified? Like, that it's something that they are confident with, that they can,
So what would you be looking, so I would relate it back to a big idea, and then I would make an exit card, not on a day like today.
yeah.
Specific to whatever that big idea was.
Because it was so, the two groups were so different, like, two more classes of experiments like that with the first group, and I would be convinced that they know,
So they might be working on different big ideas,
Yeah.
right? So the same with
And the
Tina's
other-
class. The
yeah.
first group, they could easily go around and measure lots of things. The second group
yeah,
was much weaker, and it was enough for them to say to me, okay, that was 7 centimeters. Am I putting that under more than 10 centimeters, or less than 10 centimeters, or about 10 centimeters?
yeah.
Like that, it was enough for Jaden
Yeah.
to figure that out, right?
Yeah,
And to know
I think that's a
exactly
typical day, though.
that is a very difficult.
Yeah, that is, right? So his big idea that he'd be working on would be different than someone else's. So, yeah, it's a diagnostic, but you're still going, to me, I don't want to do all the talking. To me, you're still going back to Vandewall to say, what was the big idea I was working on? That's why we went to Vandewall to pick out the body parts, right? Do the kids understand, non-standard units of measurement? Do they understand about how much is 1 centimeter, about how much is 10 centimeters,
Yeah.
about how much is 1 centimeter, right?
Yeah.
And then from that, then you would give an exit ticket, or you would give a little, just a little name.
Now, like you said, for my ones like Jaden and stuff like that's challenging enough for them, so I might even give them an adapted sheet
Absolutely.
where like, maybe they're only focusing on like millimeters and centimeters or something like that until they understand that.
Centimeters, lining up the ruler, the
Right.
0 at the end of the line.
Right, just
Like
those
he was
basic
starting
skills,
to
you
do
know?
that, not at first, but then they were doing that consistently. So
Yeah.
that might be your goal for him is, when he puts that ruler down, is he
There's
going
the
at the
zero.
edge of the ruler, is he
Yeah.
going to 0?
On an average day, we got about 3 or 4 different things going on to check for that, but they're all at different points, right?
Yep.
So.
No, for sure. And those Cuisinart, that activity lends itself beautifully to fractions. And, and
Yeah.
the multiplicative thinking as well, right? That's just, because you could see that, right? The half and then even with the thirds.
I gotta say for fractions this year, I'm totally doing the Lego fractions. I haven't done it before, but that's a big push now to use Legos to talk about fractions. And my kids love them, so they'll buy
Yeah,
right
it's
into
the
it,
same.
so. Yeah, same idea.
Yeah, so I did an estimation activity, so I had them bring a 30 centimeter ruler only. And then we did body parts like hand span, width of a fingernail, their height, length of their foot, and the distance between their heel and their knee. So they used the 30 centimeter ruler. It was interesting when they had to go to their height, because it wasn't something that they could easily measure, so they had
It was
to
beyond, right?
work with each other, stand up, kind of collaborate. And then after that, the one group, the first group with the boys, the one boy noticed his numbers were completely off reevaluated, oh, wait a second, I need to go back and look at this again. So that was kind of interesting how he problem solved.
Did they use proportional, like, did they go like,
Oh, yeah.
up to my waist is about half my body, therefore the.
Yeah, the one
so-
girl had the ruler and she started at the base of the foot and then did that.
Did any of them go halfway and then times by 2?
No.
No.
But you know, good for him for noticing that it was different and thinking, okay, I need to look at this again, make sure I'm doing it right,
Yeah,
you know?
because I said, why don't you guys kind of compare each other's work? It should be similar, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it should be. And then when it wasn't, I forget the boy's name.